Hi Stampers, this is Kim with Grading Inspirations. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to take a look at another layout. We looked at one last week, and actually we'll be looking at simple card layouts through the month of July. So the one I have to share with you today is right here, and I call it a split panel layout. And the reason I call it that is because you take a panel that we would use for a first layer for a card that is 4 by 5 1/4, and then you cut it. You cut it at 2 inches, and then you will have a piece that is 2 by 4 and 3 1/4 inches by 4 inches. And then you place those on your card front, on your A2 card front, as though they were one piece. You just line them right up against each other like I've done right here. And then if you care to, you can cover up that seam with several different things. You could use pattern paper, like this is about 1/4 inch wide of pattern paper. You could use cardstock, you could use ribbon, you can use different widths of pattern paper and cardstock. You could use combinations of pattern paper over cardstock, or one color cardstock over another color. That's up to you. It just could go on and on and on. Or you could just do what I did with this card, and I just butted the two pieces right up against each other. And it just so happened with this pattern paper, this design was in the background, so you don't really notice the seam all together that much. But then what I did also on the inside of most of the cards for today anyway, was I added a little strip of one of the pieces of pattern paper to just give it a little extra interest inside. And as you can see, this is a top fold card that was 11 by 4 1/4, scored and folded at 5 1/2. But with my little pattern here, I used 8 1/2 by 5 1/2, scored and folded at 4 1/4. Now I have some other cards to show you. And let's see, let me find them. Now, when you look at my little sample here, I have the narrower piece at the top and the wider piece down at the bottom. But for this, I flipped the design, and the wider piece is at the top. And that is exactly what I did with this one. The wider piece at the top, but I've used a piece of coordinating pattern paper to hide that seam. And then here's the inside, where I've put just a strip of this pattern paper. And then, whoops, they're flying everywhere. Here's one that is like my pattern. The smaller section is at the top. The wider section is at the bottom. I have 2 strips for the greeting. And I have some little tiny bees on there as an embellishment. Open it up. See, this one I didn't put any extra paper in it. But I did separate the 2 patterns with this little strip, 1/4 inch strip of cardstock. And that's 1/4 inch by 4 inches. And then here's one where I used ribbon. I just, the first thing I did was I took a piece of printer paper and cut it 4 by 5 1/4. That is what I adhered these 2 pieces of pattern paper to. Then I took the white ribbon and I taped it to the back of that panel. So it was actually taped to the printer paper. And then I used, in the front, I just put some glue dots under it. Then I put the pink ribbon over it, and taped it to the back. And honestly, because this white ribbon is kind of gauzy, the glue dots are actually help to hold the pink ribbon in place too, because the glue kind of oozed up through the gauze. So that worked. But anyway, the ribbon is another thing you can use to separate the two panels and to hide that seam if you want. And then here's one where I used a little bit wider piece of pattern paper, and it is, I believe, a 1/2 inch. And then there's the inside. And then I did make a Christmas version. And with this one, I just got a contrasting piece of cardstock, and it is not quite 1/4 of an inch. I think it's like 3/16 of an inch. So it's just real a little bit thinner, but I just thought it really looked good with the red in the pattern paper, and it kind of set the two pieces apart because it contrasts with the green. And here's one more Christmas one I made. And this is where I used 2 different colors of cardstock. This one, it's Lost Lagoon, is cut at 3/4 of an inch by 4. And then this one is cut 1/2 an inch by 4. And it just kind of gave it a little bit different look and covered up that seam. Now, another thing you can do, I talked about how you can put the smaller portion at the top and larger at the bottom, or just flip it. You can also flip it this way and have a landscape version of the card. That's what I've done here. And of course, I've covered up the seam with a little bit of ribbon. And then here's another one. And I did not cover up the seam this time. I left it just like this, nothing. And then there's the inside. So let's put together one of these real quick. And see what we have here. I need to set these behind me. I'm running out of space up here. So I'll take this. I'm going to need some dimensionals. And the absolute best way that this could work is if you have pattern paper that on the back of it is a design that looks really good with the front of it, because then you just cut your paper at 5 1/4 by 4, and then we're going to trim it. We're going to put it in here. Let's see, let's put, what do we want to put at the top? Well, let's just cut this at 3 1/4 with the flowers. Have more of the flowers than the stripes. And there we go. So we're going to put that on the front of our card. And I do have this strip that's very light green. It's called Soft Seafoam, that I will put right here to separate things. And don't worry about measurements and that kind of thing, because those will be on my corresponding blog post. So if you didn't get to write them down, that's okay. And the link to that blog post will be found in the description of this video. So let's put some adhesive on here. And you can use any kind of adhesive you want, liquid, liquid glue, or whatever you care to use. And if you do not feel that you can get these lined up with a even border along the top and the sides, do the little trick that I told you about that I used for the ribbon. Cut a piece of printer paper at 4 by 5 1/4, and then glue or adhere your pieces to it, and then adhere that to the card base. So now let's get this one. And we're just going to bump it right up against that edge, line it up. Should line up really well because it was from the same piece. Sometimes when we cut, they don't line up real well, but if you've cut them from the same piece, it probably will. And now I do need some liquid glue for this because that is just too tiny, too thin. Let's see here. Okay, and we're just going to put this. Now you can put it more on the bottom one or more on the top one. Doesn't matter, you just kind of want to hide your seam. And again, this is optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want, and I don't think that's quite, it's not quite even. There we go. It's a little better. And we have this sentiment, have a beautiful day. We'll put that on dimensionals. These all off of here. One came flying back. And there we go. Now we do have the inside. I think we can use the Stampin' Seal for that. And all I did was cut out a 1 inch by 4 inch strip of the pattern paper. I used to put that right on the bottom. You could put it at the top if you want, or you could cut one that's 1 inch by 5 1/4 and put it along this side or this side. It's up to you. And then we're going to just pop this in here. And there is our card. Now I have one other card right here. And like I say, lots of times you don't have that just one, you know, pattern paper that you like both sides or that you feel that it matches. So you just go and you get you know, a couple pieces and find things that match and just cut them. And this one is 3 1/4 by 4, and this one is 2 by 4. And we're just going to put some adhesive on the back of this, and you just assemble your card just like we did the one where we just used the one piece of pattern paper and cut it in two. Let's see here. There's that. As you can see, I've already stamped a greeting on here. There was a nice little space there by the B, and I thought, oh, that would be great for the greeting. So that made it even better. And we're going to just bump this right up against the one we already have on there. Press it into place. Now, this is one where I feel it needs something to hide that seam because the little flowers are cut off. So that's why I think a little piece of, in this case, we're going to use cardstock, works really well. Just to kind of, it just looks like it needs to continue and it doesn't. So this just kind of helps to set them apart and yet bring them together, if you know what I mean. So let's do that. We'll get the liquid glue out again. Now, I like this card layout. Number one, it's simple and it's fast, and you know, it really takes no time to get the cards together. But it also, I was able to use some scraps. And I always like to use scraps. And not just scraps of my pattern paper, but of the cardstock. So that's always nice. That's one good thing about a lot of layouts. You can use scraps because a lot of layouts do. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Many times layouts allow you to use up your scraps. And there's this card. Now, of course, we could add things to it. We could add embellishments and that kind of thing, or just leave them like this. I think they're just perfectly fine like this. They look very nice. But again, these cards are quick and easy. Like I say, they're also versatile because you can, you know, arrange them like this, or like this, or like this. And honestly, I didn't make one oriented this way with a smaller one on this side, but you certainly could. So that's why I just think this is a good layout. And it's an especially good layout for beginners because it gets you thinking about your layer, that 4 by 5 1/4 layer, and then how you can break it up different ways. And this is a very basic way. Then you know you could go on and you can cut it up more, you know, into 4 pieces. You could cut it into strips, use part of the strips, cut it into rectangles, use only part of them or use them all. It's just a good place to start when you want to start exploring using different layers and different layouts. So here are the 2 that are landscape. These are the 2 we put together. And then these are all the other cards that I made this week. And there you go. Like I said, this is a split panel layout. Once again, all the measurements and more information will be found in my corresponding blog post, and the link to that blog post is in the description of this video. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, stamp happy.